There exists a kind of intelligence no one dares to speak of. You won't find it in classrooms. No textbook explains it, and no teacher dares to teach it. Yet everyone trembles the instant they sense it. It doesn't shine under the spotlight. It doesn't beg for applause. It works in silence, subtle, invisible, surgical. You've witnessed it. The man who never raises his voice, but owns the entire room. The woman who smiles sweetly while pulling strings nobody else can see. They don't speak often, but when they do, silence falls. Not because they're loud, but because every word lands like a blade. This is dark intelligence, and once you see it, the world will never look the same. Dark intelligence doesn't chase, it waits. It doesn't plead, it positions. It doesn't brawl, it ends things with quiet precision. Machiavelli didn't admire intellect for brilliance. He admired it for danger, for its ability to dominate without leaving fingerprints. If you've always felt you weren't softer, but sharper, then this message is for you. Because once you embrace this mindset, mediocrity dies forever. Subscribe now to Curiosity to Wisdom, because this is not self-help fluff. This is the dark psychology of power, the art that rulers, conquerors, and predators have used for centuries. If you want comfort, leave. If you want control, stay. They will never teach you this, not in school, not in polite society, not in any book stamped with approval by the institutions that feed you illusions of safety. Because if the masses truly understood how dark intelligence operates, if they grasped how awareness can be weaponized, they would not just avoid you. They would fear you before you ever lifted a hand. And fear is the purest acknowledgement of power. The beginning is not about drowning yourself in study, nor memorizing theories or systems that keep people blind. The beginning is subtle, quiet. You don't move loudly. You let silence be your first disguise. Silence forces others to fill the air, to spill themselves in front of you, to reveal without realizing it. While they chatter, you sharpen your vision. You notice the inconsistencies, the pauses too long, the smiles that stretch but don't reach the eyes. You see the trembling behind their confidence, the faint bitterness tucked behind every forced compliment. You learn to laugh when something unfunny is said, not because you're entertained, but because you are testing the waters, mapping the room. Who leans in, desperate for validation? Who mirrors the laughter because they fear standing out? Each false chuckle sketches another line in your private diagram of their psychology. Soon a revelation unfolds. The world is not ruled by reason. It is driven by madness carefully dressed as logic. Men and women tear each other apart for illusions they secretly know are fragile. They protect lies with fury, not because the lies are convincing, but because their egos are too brittle to survive without them. They raise their voices not in strength, but in terror that their weakness might be exposed. They parade toughness like armor, yet inside they crumble, begging for stability. And as you stand still, you begin to see the patterns underneath the chaos. It is like decoding, a language only you can hear. The unspoken becomes clearer than the spoken. And this is where the first shift takes place. You realize that predictability is born the moment someone feels safe. Safety makes them lower their defenses, reveal the blueprint of their soul. That is your opening. That is the silent doorway. You don't crash through it. You slip inside, unseen, inevitable. You begin to understand that the true art of control is not found in loud displays or overt demonstrations, but in the quiet dismantling of illusions. Questions become your scalpel. You ask, not to gather facts, not to confirm details, but to peel away the armor people hide behind. A simple why or how can fracture a carefully constructed mask. Most people are not prepared for silence. They rush to fill it, spilling words they never intended to reveal. You let that silence linger, heavy enough to make them squirm, until their discomfort forces out confessions cloaked as casual remarks. Their emotions betray them more effectively than any interrogation ever could. They believe you harmless, even passive, yet all the while you are harvesting data, piecing together the inner mechanics of their fears and desires. Your perception begins to sharpen to a level that feels almost unfair. You stop being distracted by the version of themselves that people desperately project. The charm, the bravado, the politeness, it all becomes translucent, paper-thin. What you see instead is the structure beneath the performance, leverage points, weaknesses, utilities, risks. A nervous laugh reveals insecurity. Overcompensated pride reveals inferiority. Excessive flattery reveals calculation. And while the average person only reacts after betrayal, you learn to spot the traitor before the act, the liar before the falsehood leaves their tongue, the insecure before the arrogance hardens into words. It's not intuition, it's precision, a skill honed through relentless observation. And as your vision clears, something fundamental within you shifts. You stop reacting as an emotional participant in the endless theater of human drama. You step back, becoming tactical instead of personal. The need to prove yourself, to be right, to be liked, dies quietly, and in its place rises a colder, sharper aware. NS. Truth itself has little weight compared to perception. People rarely care about what is real. They care about what feels real. Trust, once seen as sacred, becomes no more than a temporary instrument, a key to doors that would otherwise remain closed. And the illusions people cling to, those fragile narratives they fight to protect, become your strongest currency. For whoever can manufacture, bend, or withhold illusion at will holds the strings, and the one who holds the strings inevitably masters the crowd. What awakens within you is something far deeper than the shallow definitions people cling to. Dark intelligence is not the sterile number on an IQ test, nor the temporary glow of charm, nor even the grind of constant effort. It is the mastery of perception, the ability to bend how others see reality itself. It is domination without touching a sword, victory achieved not by force, but by making others surrender willingly to the world you craft around them. Your words become weapons, but not in the crude, obvious way most people use them. Each phrase is deliberate, measured, and designed to pierce exactly where it hurts most. Sometimes it's a truth whispered so gently that its venom goes unnoticed until it has already spread. Other times, it is silence so heavy that it forces a person to choke on their own thoughts. You drop truths like poison, subtle, untraceable, irreversible. The effect lingers long after the moment has passed, reshaping how they see you, themselves, and the balance of power between you. You stop playing the role of defender. You no longer explain yourself because explanations are invitations to be questioned. You no longer react to disrespect because reaction is the reward the other side is hunting for. Instead, you allow silence, a raised eyebrow, a calm withdrawal, to do what shouting never could, make others regret. Regret not because you punished them openly, but because your absence, your refusal to engage, becomes a mirror that forces them to face themselves. In this transformation, you learn the supreme strength of concealment. You reveal nothing. Your goals remain hidden behind a fog of unpredictability. Even pain itself, once seen as weakness, becomes just another form of data. Every insult, every betrayal, every wound gives you intelligence, a map of how the world and the people within it operate. You are not cold. You are controlled. You
are not cruel. You are precise. And precision, when sharpened enough, becomes terrifying. This is the metamorphosis, the point where you stop molding yourself to fit into a broken order and begin the work of rewriting it. The beauty of this shift is almost sinister. No one recognizes the transformation until it is too late. By the time they notice, you are no longer playing the game. They are playing yours.
When dark intelligence takes root, it does not merely add skills or sharpen habits. It transforms you into something different altogether. It reshapes the very architecture of how you think, feel, and act.
This transformation does not scream, it whispers. And yet, its presence radiates so powerfully that others feel unease in your company without ever understanding why. It is the quiet birth of traits so lethal that they instill fear before anyone can explain the source of their discomfort. Trait 1. Emotional disconnection. Where most are puppets to their emotions, you learn to cut the strings. Anger no longer hijacks you. It becomes raw material for analysis. You feel it rise, and instead of exploding, you study it, asking, what triggered this? What does it reveal about them? Sadness does not drown you. It sharpens your strategy. Even fear, the emotion that paralyzes most, mutates into foresight, a warning system that lets you anticipate danger long before it arrives. While others are collapsing under their own storms, you remain unshaken, running calculations with icy precision. Trait 2. Surgical observation. You don't simply watch people, you dismantle them. Every nervous twitch, every forced laugh, every glance held too long or broken too quickly becomes data. You see the contradictions between their words and their body language, between their stories and their micro-expressions. They feel it too, that eerie sensation of being seen through, and it terrifies them because deep down, everyone knows they are hiding something. Trait 3. Controlled presence. You discover the immense force of silence. You can enter a room without speaking, and yet your very absence of words bends the atmosphere. Mystery becomes your armor. It makes people project their own fears and assumptions onto you. The less they know, the more they imagine. Your rarity amplifies your value, even.
Your absence wields influence, for when you withdraw, people chase the vacuum you leave behind. Trait 4. Strategic speech. You stop wasting words. Unlike the majority who babble to fill space, you use speech like a scalpel. Every pause, every carefully chosen word, every question is intentional. You don't persuade directly. You implant seeds so subtly that people end up convincing themselves of the very idea you wanted them to adopt. Trait 5. Unshakable self-reliance. Perhaps the deadliest trait of all. You no longer hunger for validation. Praise, recognition, understanding. These once held you captive, but now they mean nothing. And in that severance lies true freedom. For the one who needs nothing cannot be bribed, cannot be manipulated, and above all, cannot be controlled. Observation without application is wasted energy. To see clearly but never act is to let opportunity rot. Power that remains hidden forever is no power at all. It is potential decaying into weakness. The true mastery of dark intelligence lies in the ability to act openly, in plain sight, yet without ever being detected. You move as though you are invisible, yet every step rearranges the board. This is how strategy becomes execution, and how execution becomes domination. Guide conversations without dominating them. You don't speak to impress. Vanity is the language of amateurs. Instead, you speak to extract. Each question you ask is a scalpel, peeling back a layer of disguise. You never interrupt. You allow them to talk themselves into exposure. Even your silence is a trap, for people rush to fill it with words they never planned to reveal. Use silence as pressure. Stillness unnerves. Where most rely on noise, you rely on absence. A pause too long forces the other person to break, spilling apologies, explanations, and justifications that expose the truth. You don't raise your voice, you make theirs stumble. Mirror emotions, then redirect them. You learn the art of reflection. When anger rises, you don't fight it head-on. You mirror it just enough for them to feel understood. Then you bend it, turning their fury into obedience. Pride becomes your lever. Insecurity becomes your rope.
Every emotion, once mirrored, can be redirected until it carries your design forward. Reveal intentions only after victory. The deadliest strike is the one no one sees coming. You let them misjudge you, let them dismiss you, let them underestimate you. You nod, you smile, you play harmless, and then, once the outcome is sealed, you reveal, calmly, coldly, that they were pawns, moved exactly where you needed them. Never wield power emotionally. Emotion clouds precision. You strike wit.
Without rage, without spectacle. No theatrics, no gloating. Just the clean, surgical execution of necessity. Rage wastes energy. Control wins quietly. Conceal your depth. Never reveal the full map of your strategy. Show just enough sharpness to be respected, but never enough to be predicted. The illusion of transparency is itself a trap. Let them believe they hold control, even as they step obediently into the net you've woven. This is why cunning always outlives brute force. Anyone can roar like a lion, but the fox wins by moving in silence, choosing precisely where to step and exactly when to bite. If this is cutting deep, stay. Most people will never touch these tools. They're too afraid to step out of the weak frame. But if you're still here, you're different. Subscribe to Curiosity to Wisdom because you are not learning tricks. You are learning to rebuild identity. The most dangerous battlefield is not found in politics, boardrooms, or even on blood-stained soil. It is in relationships. This is where people lose the war long before they realize they were even fighting. Here, most surrender everything willingly. They abandon logic at the first spark of affection. They trade away power for comfort, believing dependency is love. They beg to be chosen, explain themselves endlessly, and hand over the keys to their self-worth just to hold on to the illusion of connection. What they call love often becomes their greatest form of slavery. But when you operate with dark intelligence, you no longer stumble blindly into these traps. You see relationships for what they are, not romantic fairy tales, not endless negotiations, but structures of power. Every interaction is a signal. Every compliment carries an intent. Even silence is charged with meaning. What most people fail to realize is that their desperation always exposes them. They rush to reveal themselves, bleeding out their fears, their traumas, their insecurities far too quickly, believing it will make them understood. In truth, they are only handing over the very weapons that will later control them. You, however, resist this reflex. You remain quiet, not out of shyness, but out of design. You let the other person reveal their patterns before you reveal a single thread of yours. You allow them to tie their own ropes, to expose their soft points, their contradictions, their need for validation. You don't waste energy confronting disrespect, because confrontation elevates it. Instead, you erase it. Silence, in your hands, becomes sharper than any blade. Where anger only feeds the fire, your absence extinguishes it. And absence is not just passive, it is punishment, it is power. A manipulator feeds on your reaction. When you deny it, you deny them control. They grow terrified not by you or rage, but by your refusal to acknowledge their existence. To be ignored by the one they couldn't bend is the deepest wound they can suffer. You don't chase apologies. You don't argue your value. You don't repeat your expectations. When energy turns false, you vanish, and that disappearance echoes louder than any speech you could have delivered. For in the silence of your absence, they hear what they never wanted to face, that you were the one with power all along. The most dangerous battlefield is not found in politics, boardrooms, or even on blood-stained soil. It is in relationships. This is where people lose the war long before they realize they were even fighting. Here, most surrender everything willingly. They abandon logic at the first spark of affection. They trade away power for comfort, believing dependency is love. They beg to be chosen, explain themselves endlessly, and hand over the keys to their self-worth just to hold on to the illusion of connection.
What they call love often becomes their greatest form of slavery. But when you operate with dark intelligence, you no longer stumble blindly into these traps. You see relationships for what they are, not romantic fairy tales, not endless negotiations, but structures of power. Every interaction is a signal. Every compliment carries an intent. Even silence is charged with meaning. What most people fail to realize is that their desperation always exposes them. They rush to reveal themselves, bleeding out their fears, their traumas, their insecurities far too quickly, believing it will make them understood. In truth, they are only handing over the very weapons that will later control them. You, however, resist this reflex. You remain quiet, not out of shyness, but out of design. You let the other person reveal their patterns before you reveal a single thread of yours. You allow them to tie their own ropes, to expose their soft points, their contradictions, their need for validation. You don't waste energy confronting disrespect, because confrontation elevates it. Instead, you erase it. Silence, in your hands, becomes sharper than any blade. Where anger only feeds the fire, your absence extinguishes it. And absence is not just passive, it is punishment, it is power. A manipulator feeds on your reaction. When you deny it, you deny them control. They grow terrified not by you. It was once said that men are governed by two forces, love or fear. Love, the promise of affection and belonging. Fear, the shadow of punishment and consequence. Entire empires have been built and destroyed on these levers of control. Yet dark intelligence opens a third path, one that slips past both. It is not love that binds them. It is not fear that holds them. It is the silent weight of awareness, the knowledge that you are watching. Always, quietly, permanently. This is the essence of control without spectacle. You don't need to be loved, because love is fickle, fragile, and dependent on the mood of the moment. You don't need to be feared, because fear fades once the threat is gone. Instead, you create a presence that lingers in the mind. People self-regulate in your silence. They hesitate before lying, because they know you will see through it. They second-guess their disrespect, because they've felt the emptiness of your absence. You do not coerce them. They coerce themselves under the weight of your unseen influence. If you've reached this point, it means you are not simply curious. Curiosity is the spark, but it dies quickly, unless it is sharpened into intent. Making it here means you are ready. Ready to stop playing the predictable roles handed to you by society. Ready to stop bleeding your emotions in front of people who only weaponize them. Ready to stop being bent, used, and manipulated by those who understand the game better than you do. You are standing at a threshold. On one side lies the ordinary, the person who reacts, who explains, who apologizes for existing. On the other side lies the dangerous, the person who sees without being seen, who moves without being tracked, who influences without needing credit. This is not a small shift, it is a metamorphosis. To become dangerously intelligent is not about chasing attention or demanding recognition. It is about mastery over yourself first, and through that, mastery over the world around you. And once you step through this door, there is no turning back. Because once you learn how to watch in silence, you will see what others cannot. And once you see